All right, let's talk Houston Texans. It's been an eventful offseason up to this point. A lot of big moves, a lot of big deals down in Houston. Some of them made a lot of really good headlines. A lot of people, a lot of talking heads were really in favor of them. Some got some criticism. Well, today we're going to break down a series of moves that a lot of people were very critical of the Texans for making, but it actually was a genius move by the front office and a great sign for the future of this Texans franchise. We'll get to that in just one second. But first, I'm Nick. That's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Houston Texans sent shockwaves through the offseason just a few weeks ago when they dealt Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders, and then they brought in Trent Brown and Cam Robinson to kind of replace and backfill this offensive line. Let's go ahead and pull up the reports of Robinson and Brown's deal just to refamiliarize you guys with just these news updates here. And just it's really important to understand here that this was not just a fly-by-night deal by the Texans. This was part of a concise strategy moving away from a top flight player to surround this offensive line with more quality depth and overall better performance. Remember, this was the 21st ranked pass blocking offensive line with Laramie Tunsil in 2024. It's clear that just having Tunsil there was not going to solve all their issues. And we got some data to back up the rationale behind this decision. So let's go ahead and pull up our first graphic here. This is the average pass blocking grade compared to the top three tackles, right? Because in today's NFL, there's a lot of swing tackles. You got to have a quality depth guy at all times. For the Texans in 2024, based on career averages in 2025, the projected top three tackles. And so you can see on the left there, you had Titus Howard, Laramie Tunsil, and Blake Fisher. They graded out about 65 on average. That's with Tunsil really accelerating the grade. They still were not very good between those three guys. You factor in now Titus Howard, Cam Robinson, and Trent Brown. You can see we're looking at a 5+ point bump in overall average pass blocking grade. Basically, what this means is the Texans have more depth and they're overall a better pass blocking team with the addition of Trent Brown and Cam Robinson, as opposed to having Laramie Tunsil, great player, but having to rely on Titus Howard and a young guy in Fisher who has potential, but let's be honest, proved he wasn't quite ready for prime time. Let's go into our second graphic here. We're talking about experience. This is what matters. You're trying to make a deep playoff run. Experience really matters. So if they had kept the core in place with their tackles, with Howard, Tunsil, and Fisher, they would have had roughly about 8,000 career pass blocking snaps. The vast majority of that was Laramie Tunsil. With Tunsil gone and now just Howard, Robinson, and Trent Brown, they now have about well over 10,000. You can see on the right side of the graph there, right around 11,000 career pass blocking snaps with a lot of postseason experience as well. This is so important, right? If you're trying to be a championship team, experience matters. This is why the Chiefs, when they have significantly less talent than a few other teams in the AFC, can consistently make deep playoff runs. The Patriots were like this as well. When you have postseason experience, a lot of veterans, you can work your way through adversity through those postseason challenges and make deep playoff runs. I think that hurt Houston a little bit the past couple seasons, and that's why Caserio and company is trying to get a little bit more veterans in some key positions. Tackle, you need to be experienced, savvy. You have to deal with the ups and the downs. And I think that's what we're seeing here. The Texans created a lot more experience at that critical position where veteran leadership matters. And just to finally put a bow on this, let's look at a cap analysis of these moves. That's so important. So you can look on the Laramie Tunsil on the left and the combination of Cam Robinson and Trent Brown on the right. So you have the blue, that's their APY of their current contracts, and the red is their valuation according to overthecap.com. Overthecap.com does a great job with their valuation. They look at a player's position, they look at their performance, and they just value how much that player should count against a salary cap. And since we're all talking tackles here, it's a good apples to apples comparison. So you can see Laramie Tunsil's APY a little north of 20, his valuation a little north of 20. So that's sort of a fair price there. But you can see on the far right there, look at this. You can see Cam Robinson and Trent Brown, their APY combined is less than 10. So you can see huge cap savings there, but their valuation is about 17, 18. It's just a little south of 20. So while we all understand this, Laramie Tunsil is a better player than Brown and Cam Robinson, but on a valuation basis, it makes much more sense to have Robinson and Brown than to just throw all your eggs in the Laramie Tunsil basket, especially when considering the fact that as a team, as a collective, remember, this is a team game. This isn't 11 individual players. You got to play as a team. They're a better pass blocking team now with this move. People were very critical of it, but they're better now at their biggest weakness, pass blocking, than they were last season. I think Caserio and the Texans front office deserves a lot of credit for this really smart strategy. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this, but Texans fans, you first in the comment section below. Now that we've kind of walked you through the data and kind of explained the rationale, how would you grade how the Texans have handled this offensive line this offseason, right? Do you still hate it? Do you think it's an F? Do you feel a little bit better about it, but you're not sure and think it's a C? Or now that you've seen the data and understand what's going on here, maybe you think it's an A. Whatever it is, grade how the Texans have handled this offensive line this offseason in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on everything Houston Texans and specifically those big guys up front?
Yeah, Nate, I think the way that you add context to the whole situation as far as showing the analysis of the cap that, these guys are both playing, they're both signed, excuse me, below what their valuation was. That seems like a good move for the Texans. Seeing that, the combination, this is something we talk about a lot on this channel is when you have a big name player, when you go to replace them, you can't try to replace them with one simple player. It just doesn't work that way. So the fact that in conjunction with the two players they brought in, that trio now in itself is better than what it was, prior with Laramie Tunzel. I think that's important as well, showing the Texans had some good strategy. But to the overarching theme, and I think Texans fans will know this was a report that came out like I would say like 20 days ago, or excuse me, 19 days ago, roughly, talking about why the Texans moved on from the group of offensive linemen they did. Talking about there's a lot of problems, a lot of toxicity in the locker room. Now, let me get this clear: it wasn't due to Laramie Tunzel. Laramie Tunzel is beloved in the Texans locker room, but it was guys like Kenyon Green and Shaq Mason that really kind of caused a negative air to that locker room down the stretch. The other thing that Laramie Tunzel didn't do, though, is they said he wasn't a vocal enough leader to get control of that locker room. So the fact that they said, okay, this trio, we've got Mason, we've got Kenyon Green, they're causing problems, we need to move off of them. We have Laramie Tunzel, and he's supposed to be our guy. He's supposed to be the problem eliminator. He's supposed to be able to take anyone to the side and, get this locker room going in the right direction. Well, he's not. And he's getting to the wrong side of 30 and we need to figure out what we're going to do. They decided to move off of him. I think it was a risky move, but now seeing how that they combated everything, seeing how that this Texans, excuse me, front office made some decisions, but then rebuilt from them, and they're a little bit better now than they were with those guys. I think it's a really interesting move here. I think it's going to pay off, and I think Texans fans should see like, okay, well, we know what the locker room issues were. Was it something that we should have dug through? Should we maybe just got rid of Mason and Green and kept Tunzel? Or do we need to rebuild? Because we all know that D'Amico Ryans has said he wants a culture change. He wants to have young leaders on this team. He doesn't want to have 30-plus-year-old guys be, the vocal leaders. He wants to have young superstars, like you said, with his corners and with his edge rushers, everybody that got all these big signings this year. That's what he wants to do. So seeing that he's able to replace those guys, get better production for less cap, I think this is a really great move by the Houston Texans, showing this front office definitely has a plan and they're executing it very, very well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think you bring up a great point about Kenyon Green and Shaq Mason, but the reality is tackle is still critically important. And while those guys were, you can call them a cancer in the locker room, however you want to describe it, things were not going well. I think the biggest problem was honestly they weren't playing well on the offensive line, right? Like John Madden once said, the late great John Madden, winning is a great deodorant. And I think some of the issues when you have a bunch of veterans that are used to winning and playing a lot and doing well, and things don't go well up front, they aren't executing well, things can fall apart quickly. And I think that's why you got to get rid of those guys and just reshuttle the team and like kind of reset the environment. Anyone who's worked in any sort of team in world, whether it's a football team, a business, a church, charity, whatever, the moment anybody, if it's one or two people on a team, just start getting discontented, it just drags everybody down into the mud, and it can just offset everything good you're trying to do, especially when you're trying to shift the culture on the offense, which of course we saw this season with Houston making the offensive coordinator change that they did. It's sort of a wholesale opportunity to just reset everything on this offense. The Texans took advantage of it, and that's what they were trying to do. And they did it in such a way where they actually got a lot of value out of it, which is critically important, right? Because we know the Texans incredibly talented, a lot of young superstars. There's going to be a lot of cap hits allocated to a bunch of big name guys, right? We just know this. We look at quarterback, wide receiver, defense. We already know Stingley, but Anderson's going to get a lot of money, right? There's going to be a lot of dollars allocated to some really good players. So you need to be in a situation where you have some flexibility. And that's why I like, not only did they get this valuation update that we just saw in terms of cap relief that we saw a few slides ago, while also getting actually a little bit better as a team, they actually got some draft assets too, right? They ended up with a second round pick next year, a third round pick this year, and then swapping some fourths and sevenths and things like that. So they actually got a decent amount of draft capital out of the Laramie Tunsil deal. So they have a chance to add more depth and improve in some areas, maybe get another young tackle to eventually replace, a Trent Brown or a Robinson when one of them doesn't work out. And this is just what smart teams do, right? We saw this from basically every title contender over the past 15, 20 years or so. There's a good, relatively young, but, towards the middle of his career kind of player, but a team moves off of him early. People are surprised, what the heck's going on? It turns out to be a smart move. The Patriots in 2002 did this with Lawyer Malloy. He was a team captain, a leader, good player, late 20s. Patriots said now's not the time. They cut him. They obviously went on to go win multiple Super Bowls after that. It was the right move to make. The Kansas City Chiefs did this with L'Jarius Sneed, right? The list goes on and on of quality teams, title contending teams, having good players. When it's time to move off of them, though, to try to reset your roster, reset the culture, they do it, and it's always a smart move to make. Guys like Laramie Tunsil are replaceable. They're good players. They're replaceable. You know who isn't replaceable? CJ Stroud. And that's about it. And so you need to make sure you are always reinventing the structure around Stroud to make sure it is perfectly suited to allow him to excel. You saw in the graphs, they're a better pass blocking team. That's critically important than where they were last year at the tackle position. They've got much more experience. That's critically important for postseason runs. And they allocated some extra cap dollars for the future based on these moves as well. So they checked every single box they needed to, while also meeting their sort of strategic goal of offsetting the culture and putting things in a new direction. This is really good front office management. It's really hard to check every single box. It's really actually incredible, to be totally honest with you. And again, that's why I thought it was so bizarre that people were so darn critical of Caserio and the Texans front office, saying this is the dumbest move of all time. What are you doing? This makes no sense. But when you take a step back, not only does it make sense, they did a great job executing it. Because normally when you change the culture and try and reset an entire position group like this, you usually either get a dip in performance, or you got to overpay than you want to on the cap side, or a combination of everything. Instead, the Texans as a team, as a collective, remember, this is so important. It's not, 11 different guys playing independently. It's not 11 guys playing tennis at the same time. It's a team. It's a unit. As a collective, they are a better pass blocking team going to 2025 than they were before they made this deal. They're more experienced and they're cheaper, right? Across the board, this is great front office management. And on top of it all, they get to reset the culture under D'Amico Ryan's vision. This is Caserio executing his head coach's plan in conjunction absolutely perfectly. It's an incredible job by the leadership in Houston. A lot of people are critical of it, but Texans fans, you really shouldn't be, because actually, if you take a step back and really dive into the data and the numbers, it was a phenomenal move.